If those behind the anti-Beijing protests are right, it's the end of Hong Kong as we know it. Despite the summer heat, a chill wind blew through Tamar Park in front of government headquarters as China imposed a draconian new sedition law on the former British colony. A handful of pro-Beijing supporters turned out to toast this authoritarian milestone. This man said he's happy because the anti-China spies and agents of chaos will have nowhere to run to now. But most of the city's 7.5 million people oppose the national security law. They treasure their freedoms and deeply resent Beijing's repressive overreach. But in a recorded speech to the UN Human Rights Council released today, Hong Kong's pro-Beijing leader insisted China isn't ripping up the deal it did with Britain.
The legislation will not undermine one country, two systems, and Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy. Hong Kong is a free and diversified society. We respect differences in opinion.
The Standing Committee of China's National People's Congress doesn't seem much given to differences of opinion, though. It voted unanimously to adopt the law and insert it into Hong Kong's mini-constitution. This is what the law's designed to stop. The sustained and increasingly violent revolt is the greatest challenge the party's faced in decades. 9,000 have been arrested in a year. At 11 p.m. tonight, the law was officially published in the Chinese language in Hong Kong. National Law 2020 took immediate effect. It contains 66 articles targeting separatism, subversion, terrorism and collusion with foreign powers. Beijing will establish its own national security office in Hong Kong. Offences are vaguely defined. Offenders face up to life in prison and can be tried on mainland China, where conviction rates are 99.9%.
There's only one system. There's no more one country, two systems. Communist China can handpick anyone at will and send that person back to China and put that person in jail. Everybody is at risk.
But this elected Hong Kong legislator says President Xi Jinping's got another thing coming if he thinks he'll crush Hong Kong's rebellion.
It will never be subsumed by the authoritarian China. There will always be resistance. And I'm confident in our young that they have been awakened. And the extent of the awakening is astonishing.
Today, though, Joshua Wong, a leader of the 2014 demonstrations, who's twice spent time in jail, threw in the towel, resigning with 3 other leaders from the Demosisto movement they had founded before dissolving it. 6,000 miles away, the Foreign Secretary urged China to step back from the brink, but noted when he addressed the shadow minister that he still didn't know the details of the law.
I think the right thing to do is wait to see it, but as we've made clear, if it is as we expect, then it would be not just a challenge, as she said, to the joint declaration, it would be a violation of the joint declaration. It would undermine the autonomy of the people of Hong Kong and the freedoms.
A few hours after he spoke, the law was published. Tomorrow marks the 23rd anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong. Last year, protesters attacked the Legislative Council, seen as doing Beijing's bidding. Another protest had been planned for tomorrow, although it's been banned by police. So what's going to happen now? No one knows. On the Hong Kong front line, there's an atmosphere of serious intimidation, and China has set itself on a head-on collision course with Britain and the West.
Jonathan Miller reporting. No one was available to speak to us from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, but just before we came on air, I spoke to Lord Patten, the last British governor of Hong Kong, and the pro-democracy campaigner Bonnie Leung. I began by asking her for her reaction to this new law.
Less than 2 hours ago, the Hong Kong government just published it on Gazette, but at the very same moment, it became in effect. So all of us just have to rush in onto the Gazette to try to understand the law that we do not yet understand but already governing us. And I'm horrified to realize that because both Chinese and English are legal languages in Hong Kong, but I believe that they haven't yet translated it into English.
A very interesting smirk came across your face, Lord Patten, as if in some way you saw this as rather significant that it's not published in English.
What's particularly interesting, and that was why I was perhaps smiling, is that even though the chief executive of Hong Kong didn't know what was in it, apparently, until just before it was published, she's been saying how terrific it was and putting up posters around Hong Kong saying support the national security law. Didn't say underneath brackets whatever it may turn out to be, because it really does pose a real threat to Hong Kong's not only freedom, but Hong Kong's status as a great international financial hub. I don't think Xi Jinping cares a damn. If there's damage done to Hong Kong, it will be the damage done by the Chinese Communist Party, which is behaving at the moment all around the region, all around the world, with a sort of aggressive loutishness which the rest of us shouldn't put up with.
Bonnie Leung, do you look to the British in any way whatever to enforce the agreement that Chris Patten signed in 1997?
Well, I have to be very careful answering this question because there are too many uncertainties about this law. I do not want to accidentally tread on the red line, which I may be accused of collusion with foreign powers, etc. But the Sino-British Joint Declaration is very important. That's what makes Hong Kong Hong Kong. So, of course, I would hope that the UK government would do their best to make sure that the joint declaration is still in place. Although now, because the national security law is already in place, it's already enacted, so the system is basically ruined already. To be honest, I can't see how it can be reversed, but I think it is important for the UK, who signed the joint declaration, to make sure that China do not get away with it without any consequences.
There isn't going to be a great rallying call at the United Nations to support one country, two systems. It's over, isn't it?
Well, there have been 7 UN human rights organizations which have denounced what's happening. There have been 51 human rights rapporteurs from the UN who've demanded that the UN itself should appoint a UN rapporteur for Hong Kong. There's huge support around the world for Hong Kong. And what our responsibility is in the UK is to make sure that that continues and that we continue to monitor what's happening.
Bonnie Leung, do all Chris Patten's words make you feel, oh yes, there'll be a great international response to this? Or are you really, in the end, accepting of what's happened?
I do not want to accept what is happening because what's happening is wrong. It is violating all the promises that Hong Kong people had been hearing.
But will they dare to protest tomorrow?
It has already been banned by the police. Whatever happened tomorrow will be illegal in the eyes of Hong Kong government and also the police force. But I'm sure that Hong Kong people, despite the danger, despite the potential legal consequences, Hong Kong people will continue to take to the streets.
I suspect it would be too dangerous for me to ask you whether you will go to the protest tomorrow.
True, I do not want to say that on air. But it's not about one person. It's about the whole movement. It's about Hong Kong people.
I can think of a host of people from Nelson Mandela to Martin Luther King who've made the point that you lock up people, but you can't lock up an idea. And the idea that has so inspired people in Hong Kong, and I'm astonished by that, I've never had to be that brave, is a notion of freedom, of living your life in a decent, free society. That's all people want. We owe them a promise that we will work with others over the next few years to try to ensure that China understands there are consequences when it behaves badly. And it would, of course, be easier to do that when there's an administration in Washington that genuinely believes in alliances.
Lord Patten, Bonnie Leung, thank you both very much indeed for talking with us. Thank you.